is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Boardroom podcast, where we help you stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms. I have a guest with me that I actually got introduced to or connected with by Bijal, who I just did a podcast with. And me and Brad are in the same kind of cohort because we're working with Bijal to give our brands a much needed facelift and all the good stuff that comes with starting to scale things up. And so Brad and I have a ton of alignment as far as values, so when we're jumping on and we're very similar ways of thinking. So I thought it'd be great to have him on because what he does is incredible, right? So Brad is essentially helping entrepreneurs build wealth that's going to last for generations. So he takes, if you're an entrepreneur who's at a point where you're starting to drive some revenue, you're taking some profits off the table, and you're thinking about long-term legacy, Brad is going to be the guy that's ultimately going to be the quarterback and build a team around you to help you actually turn that into a long-term legacy that you can pass on to your kids or pass on to whatever organization you want down the line. So Brad, hopefully I didn't botch the intro.
No, you did. You did great. And dude, the name of the podcast is apt because in this little cohort, I felt like you've been my board of directors because we have so much alignment. Yeah. Like you've given me some of the best advice and insight and pointers in this whole kind of rebrand and angle. So yeah, it's definitely felt like that. It's been cool.
Yeah, man. So tell me a little bit about how'd you get started? Because have you always been in wealth building? Have you always been in finances and economics or stuff like that?
I have. That's what I came up in. I actually was in that world before I was in the entrepreneur world. So I mean, go all the way back. I grew up on a family farm, 4 generations of family farm in Eastern Washington. But kind of the way farms work is you need lots of kids to work the farm, but then only one can really take it over. So the other's got to move on and find out whatever they're going to do. So I left, went to college and just had an aptitude for accounting, math, business, that kind of a thing. So I was in the accounting program there. It was a top 3 program in the nation at the time. And so I was getting my accounting degree. But as I was getting my accounting degree, I realized I knew nothing. I grew up on a farm. I knew nothing about the actual rest of the world that I was supposed to be plugging this business knowledge into. So I started taking economics degrees on the side and to better understand my accounting degree. Now, if you're already thinking, wow, Brad's a nerd, you're 100% right. I was taking extra courses on my own to understand the courses that I was taking, but that was me. So,
which is awesome because it shows that you want to understand first principle. Because I'm the same way. Yep. I want to understand how things work and how it kind of fits into the bigger picture so I can come to my own conclusions on what's going to be the best way to move forward.
Exactly. Because I was like, well, this just doesn't, you're right. I was like, I'm missing pieces to these first principles. So I started studying economics. And after a little while, they mailed me an economics degree because they're like, you took enough classes so I accidentally got an economics degree while I was trying to get my accounting degree. Hilarious. But it gets better because in economics, there's pretty high level math and I didn't understand the math. So I started taking statistics classes on the side of my economics classes to understand my accounting courses. And then after a little while, they mailed me a statistics degree as well. And it's like that poem of the little old lady who swallowed the cat to catch the spider, to catch the flight. That was what was going on with my degrees. So I graduated with 4 degrees ultimately at the end of the day, all very analytical, very data-driven, very economics, business, accounting focused. But my goal in doing all of that was I was fascinated with wealth and investing and all of that. And so my goal was to end up on Wall Street at the mecca of wealth. And I was able to do that. My first gig out of school was with Goldman Sachs. Don't hold that against me. There's good things that came from this, but I was in the belly of the beast, Goldman Sachs, downtown New York City. And I got hired in the spring, summer of 2008. So my timing was impeccable. It was perfect. I got seriously a couple months later from being hired, everything melted down and I had a front row seat. In fact, our building in New York was next door to the Lehman Brothers building. Yeah. And the day they went out of business, I was walking to work and they started filing out hundreds of people with cardboard boxes. Something crazy. We were downtown. So that was the foray into it. I didn't last long at Goldman Sachs, mostly because of the values misalignment. I mean, I had to see what was going on, but guy, if you thought I was a nerd before, this'll just push you over the top. I wasn't a trader. I wasn't on the front lines of Goldman. I actually requested a job in their compliance department. So it was kind of like, who was that inventor? I always forget the guy's name. He worked in the patent office before he like went out and became an inventor, whatever that guy's name was. Like I kind of viewed it the same way. I wanted the compliance department was.
You want to know the rules to the game.
Yeah,
you want to know.
It was the intersection of all the trades and all the tax strategy and all the investment and all the real estate and all the business. Like it was the center of all of that. And I got to see that. So I was in the high net worth, and at Goldman Sachs, we're talking high net worth. That's different high net worth than what other people call high net worth. Like I held Arnold Schwarzenegger's tax return. I held one of the Beatles tax returns. We held some pretty prominent politician stuff. So I got to see how that was all working.
Yeah.
But it definitely exposed me to there are two games of wealth being played. The game everybody else plays and the game that I got to see played. But what I realized in all of that, the quick takeaway, I guess, to make a long story only slightly longer, was I learned very early that there are two games being played. There's a wealth game and there's an income game. And as entrepreneurs, we come in and we figure out the income game, but we never get exposed to really understand this wealth game. I came and understood the wealth game, but then I realized I was missing a pretty strong component of the one defining feature across all these super high net worth people where they owned and were involved in businesses. And so that was where I was like, well, to really complete this picture, I need to go do that. That has to be a component of my path. So quit, left, started a consulting firm. We were kind of CFOs for hire, where companies would bring us in that wanted to go public, but needed their companies cleaned up. So we'd come in, clean everything up, get it ready, and then interface with the investors, the auditors, the SEC, and everything there. So we took about 24 companies public through that time frame. And that was kind of my foray into the business world, learned a lot there. And then I just always wanted to come back and do the wealth thing. So over time, about 2012, transitioned out of that, walked away from that firm and then got involved in our firm now, where we then now assist business owners in bridging that gap between their income and their wealth.
I can imagine, just the kind of experience and the exposure to that environment is one of those things that, you can't buy with education. You can't get for being in a mastermind.
You can't replicate it.
And that's why like people, when people knock like working for others and being an employee and things like that, it's like you really like there's certain, if you get into the right environment and you just kind of get a level like exposed to certain things, those experiences that you gather, if you're paying attention, and that's really the key word, if you're paying attention to what's happening, like that level of exposure that you get and the kind of awareness that you become conscious to, it's next level, and it's something that can't be taught.
It is. Right? And you're right. Like a lot of people, yeah, you're right. They dig, either getting educated or getting to, work experience or whatever. Like I said, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without all of that exposure. And I feel like we're decentralizing it. We're bringing those concepts down to the founding level business owner and, the advancement in technology, the advancement in the world. I mean, you're on the AI front. You see how quickly things are changing. Well, what's interesting about that is that started to make strategies that previously were restricted significantly more accessible as well, which is fun and it's exciting.
Yeah, because like the strategy that is being played, the game that's being played, most people don't even know that there are two games being played when it comes to like the wealth. They have no idea the real game.
Yep.
They're playing a game that was designed by those playing the real game.
Dude, it's so funny.
You don't even really know what's going on. That's crazy.
And even if you try to play the wealth game, that's the thing, is they put this facade over it and make you believe that you're playing this wealth game, where you're right. Like I got to see the consumer part of Wall Street and Goldman Sachs, and then the real wealth part, right? And the consumer part is that's not truly wealth building. That's salesmen and speculating. I mean, it's just not. Yeah. There is an entirely different game that can be accessed, but it's not brought to you by Wall Street, right? They don't have. You're in marketing, you're in business. We all understand this. If you create a product, if you're going to go to market with a product, like we wish that wealth was first order principles only, and that it was just math and it added up. But what people miss about wealth and investing is it's a product just like any other. Yeah. And if you're going to go create a product, what did Bijal tell us? Like what were the first questions she was asking? She was asking, who are we selling this to? Right.
Yep.
And Iggy, if you took 100 people off the street, how many of them started a business from scratch, stayed with it long enough to be profitable, and they're running that business? Like, how many people do you think would be there?
I don't know if there'd be very many people
1, 2, 3
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were going to create a product for the, just any 100 people off the street, would you focus it on a founding entrepreneur? You wouldn't, right? No. So Wall Street doesn't, your financial advisor doesn't, your accountant doesn't, your attorney doesn't. Like, nobody's focused on us because we're such a small number that we're completely skipped over. So the advice you hear on CNN and Fox News and wherever you're getting your, like, that's created and designed to be consumed by somebody who is not you.
That makes a lot of sense. So when do you even decide like you wanted to start focusing on working with entrepreneurs, or when did you even see the discrepancy between what's being like the product that's being out there for consumers versus what should actually be out there for entrepreneurs?
That's a really good question. A lot longer than you might have assumed, because I was only exposed to wealth. Like, I had only been exposed to that game, that I just assumed that anybody that got through the business game, because I came into business via wealth first. So I went wealth business. So when I was in the business world, I was like, oh, everybody already has wealth figured out. I don't need to teach them anything. I'm trying to learn the income game or the business game. And so I really didn't have that much intent. I wanted to be in wealth, but I hadn't had that realization. And it wasn't until 2016 when I was trying to figure out the interwebs and driving traffic and online stuff, because that was not obviously my background. I met a guy, I think a lot of your audience will probably know who he is, but Russell Brunson, founder of ClickFunnels. I met him and joined his inner circle mastermind. And it wasn't until, so when he let me in, it was by application. It was this big process to get in. He was pretty protective of the group. And when he let me in, he said, Brad, I have one rule in my group, and it's no financial people. And I was like, well, did you not read my application? Because I'm a financial person. Like, I want that to be clear. And he's like, yeah, I don't let anyone else in, but I'm making an exception for you because I have a problem I think you can solve. He's like, I'm selfishly letting you in because I want to learn from you. And that blew me away, because ClickFunnels now worth $1 billion. I thought he had everything figured out. And he proceeded, and he's been very open about this, so I'm comfortable sharing it here. It's not, he's my client, it's not confidential at this point, but he went through, he's like, I've been in business for a decade and I made tons and tons and tons of money, but I essentially don't have anything to show for it. Yeah. And he's like, I think ClickFunnels is going to be the defining thing for me. And turns out it is, but he's like, I'm more afraid now of actually losing it all and going back than I am about the potential growth of what we have to do here. So he's like, what's different about you is I can see is you know both sides of this. You see behind me. I just want you to make sure that I never have to go back. Right.
Yeah.
And that was and then being inside that group and working with entrepreneurs at a very high level, because obviously I worked with everybody at ClickFunnels. I worked with a lot of people in his masterminds. I've worked with some pretty big businesses. That was the theme, that people who come in from the business game have to learn the wealth game. It's completely different. That was my aha to be like, wait, how do you guys not know this? I just assumed everybody had it. And so it was spending time in there that I refined everything that I do, the way that I approach the things that I know. And from 2016 to now, I've just been focused on building and refining the tactics I know to make them apply to that founding business owner. Because you don't have a $10 million net worth or a $50 million net worth. You haven't exited yet. We don't have all this capital yet. We still have to figure out how to solve wealth. So I wanted to do it in a way that there wasn't you didn't already have to have millions of dollars in capital to get started. You didn't have to have those pieces. So we've kind of gone earlier in the time frame to be able to start with a business owner. Like you said, as long as you're profitable and you're covering your expenses, you're not feeding the business still, then we can start working with you to build wealth immediately.
That's awesome. So essentially, and that's really kind of like the distinction there. Once you kind of get to a point where you're actually profitable in the business, then you want to start thinking long-term about what are some pieces that you can put in place and how to go about doing that. And it's so interesting that you mentioned that you assumed because you came from one side and you were so exposed to it. It's just everybody has to,
thought so.
It's just common knowledge, right? But it's whenever you find that there's like, you feel like it's common knowledge, just when you realize like there's really not,
Yeah.
it's really not common at
Like,
all.
didn't you all accidentally get economics degrees? And don't you all know, oh no, I'm the weird one. Okay, I guess I'll tell you what I know. Yep.
But that's awesome. So what are the first steps, somebody is at that point, where they're starting to realize some profits from their business, what are some just beginner level things that they should just consider having in place as kind of like a mini checklist to get started?
And I'll qualify this with everybody's, tactically, we're going to get into, everybody needs something customized and personalized to them. So I'm always weary of like advice, right? Because I don't know you, I don't know where you're at, all of that. So we will go back to first principles, and I'll talk about a principle that I think is the most surprising to this. So I'll ask you this, Iggy, how much spare time do you have on your hands to pursue other interests that may be valuable that you don't currently have? Like, do you have a ton of extra time, or would you say it's fairly limited?
My time's pretty limited.
We're busy as entrepreneurs, especially if we have to be married or have kids and that stuff. We don't have time. I
don't have a lot of discretionary time.
We don't, right? Which is why we don't get into the wealth game, because you're like, I don't want to learn real estate or insurance or trading or taxes or any of that. Like, I don't have enough time. I'm already pulling my hair out trying to run my business. Now Brad's here saying I have to invest and build wealth, and like he's handing me a part-time job, right? That's really the first issue that we encounter. And I realized, especially like if you've exited a business and you have 9 figures sitting in your bank account, you now have time to figure something out. But if you're not that, you don't. And so, or if you're a W-2 employee who gets to clock in at 9 and go home at 5, you could probably carve some discretionary time to figure this stuff out as well. Like, we're kind of in this trap that the income generation does require a lot of us. And we have a very high opportunity cost. I know you could create time, but then that time's not growing your business, which is actually the best investment that you can make. So we're kind of stuck in this.
You're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah. So what I realized is that was the core problem of the founding entrepreneurs. I had to crack that there. And where I learned, like where I got the idea to sort of change how we're doing things, is when I was growing my business, I'm not a natural marketer. I'm not natural at that kind of stuff. And so as I started growing in marketing, I had a copywriter I had to talk to. I had a funnel builder. I had a media buyer. I had, digital, the images and creatives and all that stuff. And very soon I became so overwhelmed trying to get marketing going that I was starting to drop the ball with my clients, which is who was paying me all of the money. And I got stuck in this same, I can't spend any more time on marketing, grow my business, but I have to spend more time. And it wasn't until I hired a consultant and they came in and they said, Brad, you're doing it wrong. You're an idiot. Actually, there's this thing called a chief marketing officer. You hire that person, and now you get to talk to one person, and that person goes, finds the team, creates the strategy, makes sure that everybody's on the same page, chases all of that, gives you time back to grow your business, and they take that over. Like, that's how any business scales. You do the same in operations, you do the same in finance, you do the same in sales. You can hire somebody to take care of the rest of that. And that was the epiphany that helped me grow my business. But when I realized this was the core problem of the entrepreneur, I was like, well, what if there was one person on your team that you could give direction to, say, I want to be wealthy. Here's how I want to do it. That person could create the plan, and then they can go build the team and talk to your accountant and talk to your CPA and talk to the investments and find the deals and do the due diligence and pull the insurance professional in and ensure everybody was organized on the same page.
Yeah.
That would be a game changer, right?
100%. Because then you're essentially coming in as like a C-level person on the team. Right?
Problem is, Iggy, it doesn't exist. Nobody does it. Your accountant doesn't do it. Your financial advisor knows nothing about your taxes. Your tax guy knows nothing about your investments. Neither of them know what's going on in your business. So too bad. We just no solution to that.
Yeah.
Except there is.
And that's where you're, I think it's the chief wealth officer.
There we go. Right. Yeah.
All the branding stuff. You haven't even mentioned it. Just starting to stick.
There you go. Right. So we're not actually financial advisors. We're not accountants. We're not CPAs. We used to call ourselves wealth strategists, but everyone's like, I don't even never heard of what that is.
Yeah.
The real true service we provide is, like you said, we are your chief wealth officer. Like, that's the role that you need, is somebody solely dedicated to making you wealthy. That's what we actually do. We create the strategy, we bring in and fill the gaps in the team, and then we provide that level of accountability to make sure your wealth gets defended while you're building your business. So we give you all that time back, and we give the ability to do it. So that was the big breakthrough we had to engineer that position, or else no amount of teaching or training or bringing investments or trying to solve the stuff was going to move you forward, because you just simply didn't have the time.
And that's what I find. I mean, I think a lot of people listening, maybe a few people listening, can kind of actually experience, like, know what it feels like when you bring on a really high level team member and you make a really good hire that you're like, for the first time, somebody comes in and they're able to think and work autonomously, and you kind of set the direction, and then to just go out and make it happen, report back, and they're making progress.
It's like,
right? If you haven't experienced that, like, it's the most incredible thing ever.
It's life-changing. It really is. It makes business fun again. Yep.
Yeah. And that's essentially what you guys are doing when you come in as like the chief wealth officer.
Yeah.
Like, you're coming in as like, we're actually a part of your team.
Yep.
Like, we're coming in a part of your team. We have your best interests at heart. You give us direction and like, what's the vision? Where do you want things to be? And then we go out and take care of the details. We go out and take care of the weeds and figure out, what do we need to do? Who do we need to wrangle to make this thing happen?
Yeah. Imagine if instead of if at December 15th, you're stressed and worried about your taxes, you don't know what's going on, you call up your CPA, right? What if instead, like we just did this last week with our group, in April, I showed up and said, hey, Iggy, here's what's going on for taxes this year. This is what we need to do. You didn't do this last year. We're going to do this. Here's the documentation. This is what the IRS needs to say. Sign this. I'm going to get in front of your CPA. We're going to save taxes. Like, be amazing, right? Or similar, I was a few minutes late to our recording because I was on with our group of investors. We went out, we created relationships. We found an unbelievable investment opportunity where we're syndicating a hotel that's going to be short-term rentals that you can own at the base of a ski resort in Park City, Utah.
Yeah.
Don't come across those very often, but we went out, did all that, found it, did the due diligence, called everybody, said, get on a call, walk you through it. If you want to invest, we'll take care of it, right? Like, that's what it's like working with a chief wealth officer, as opposed to you being the monkey in the middle, having to be like, hey, what am I going to pay in taxes this year? Why? I heard my friends doing this, but you've never brought that up before. Why are we not doing this, right? It's that shift of proactivity with the strategy, as opposed to just everybody simply doing their job. That's how we move it forward.
And that's kind of like where I'm seeing that, as far as like what you guys are able to provide, is that you go from, your accountant's just going to do what they're told, right?
Yep.
And they're not really thinking outside of their specific scope. Whereas like you guys are looking at the whole picture and seeing how the different dots connect and building out the strategies to make those things happen.
Yep.
So if somebody's at a point where they're considering it, essentially what you have to do is kind of figure out like, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? If your domain and you're really at a point where your business is profitable, it'd probably be the best use of your time to continue making it profitable.
Yeah.
and hire somebody like you to take care of the wealth side, versus like starting at zero and having to learn that game all over again. And that's why you hire leadership, right? That's why you hire like top tier A players within your business, who you're essentially, when you make that hire, you're hiring with them all the incredible amount of experience and skill sets that they've already developed to do the thing.
100. And that's it. Like, the options are, go figure it out yourself, right? And learn to do real estate, or learn how insurance works, or learn how taxes work, right? And that's what a lot of the alternative investment education actually is. It's almost a trick. It's invest in real estate, but it's really get a part-time job in real estate. And I promise you, the business you have in front of you will make you way more money than a part-time job in real estate.
100%.
Or the gap is, be worth $100 million and get a family office to take everything over and then continue to grow it. And there's just this big gap in the middle that you don't have time to go learn it, but you're not big enough to have access to the rest of it, where that's what we've worked to decentralize. And the fun part is, I've been a startup business, we're over 10 million, and I've seen everything in between. So we've created a solution regardless of where your business is, to where you can hire us one-on-one, you can hire us fractionally, you can have just trainings to make sure you don't do things wrong. Like, everything in the middle, we've got something to help out. We want to get that business owner from, you're up and you're profitable, to you're making hundreds of thousands or millions a year, and we've got you through the middle of that.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful. So, I mean, because going from the wealth side to the entrepreneur side, what are some lessons that you learned as an entrepreneur and kind of getting this thing up and running? You know, what are the challenges?
So, back to first principles, I talk about things like this. So I had to redefine and relearn what risk was. I came from the investment side, and true investors, we don't determine how much risk we want to take. On the investing world, you get paid in proportion to how much risk you eliminate. That's your job, is to really eliminate risk from investments. That's how we produce returns. And it took I had to rewire my brain to think about I have to fail in order to succeed on the entrepreneur side. I have to be quick to decisions and move faster than I was used to moving. The investing wealth world just moves so much slower. And
I was gonna say you probably had to you probably came in super risk adverse and very gun shy, because you have to mitigate as much risk from on the wealth side. And it's all about preserving money versus business. It's high risk, high reward.
Try it. Yeah. So that I had to relearn, and that was a tough one. I wanted a spreadsheet, I wanted numbers, I wanted math, and people are like, "This is the business world. That not all of that exists, especially early on, right?"
Yeah.
So that
how do you essentially kind of overcome that? Because I know there's some people who are probably in a similar stage where they've kind of gone to that point where they've done everything on their own. Mm-hmm. An idea of hiring somebody to come in and kind of own that wealth side could be a little scary for them.
It is. It is.
How do you overcome that for yourself?
So I've learned that it's very, very, very hard to de-risk business, because there's just so much unknown, right? You could really only de-risk it through being experienced. Yeah. And what finally got me to take the leap into business was I kind of learned the lesson of I can't de-risk the business opportunity, but I can de-risk myself. And so before I made what finally got me to be able to fully take the leap was I changed my mentality. Instead of, because I was just used to investing all the time. Any cash I had, I was trying to get it into assets, get it invested, get it moving forward. But I realized there was a stage, if I was going to come from the income side, there was a stage in between that was missing. And this surprises business owners a lot of the time when I'm working with them, is there's this stage of liquidity. We need to be very, very, very liquid as a business owner. So I actually ended up getting a year's worth of my own expenses in the bank account before I jumped full time into business. And that's how I de-risked myself. And I kind of told myself, I was like, if I can't figure this out in a year, then I probably don't deserve to be a business owner anyway. And I should just go back to W-2. And that's what I decided to take the risk on. So I had a year's worth of my expenses saved up, which meant I could jump off. I could take all that risk. I could enter all that uncertainty, yet still, I had a mortgage and a wife and 3 kids when I started a business. And so I could make sure that they were taken care of. And so we actually deploy that same principle, but from the other direction. I can't de-risk your business, but I can de-risk you. And we're going to do that first. We're going to have you pay a ton less in taxes. We're going to get you really, really liquid. We're going to teach you how to pull profits from the business and hold on to it. And then once you're de-risked, we've never had an exception to this rule. As soon as I de-risk Iggy, his business explodes.
Yeah.
And then
why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? I have my idea on why I think that is, but I want to kind of hear your take on it.
So here's my take on it. So, the yin yang symbol, right? Chaos and order. Mm-hmm. There's that line in the middle of that chaos and order thing, right? And as humans, we actually crave both sides of that. That's why it's a powerful symbol, right? We crave uncertainty and newness and freshness and that, but we also create certainty and stability and security. But the business world is so full of chaos that we are so fully pushed into the world of chaos that we can't accept any more. We can't hold any more, have any capacity for more chaos, which means our growth becomes limited. And it isn't until we create some more certainty to balance that, we find that edge between chaos and certainty, that if I can bring you more certainty, it now increases your capacity to go take on more risk, to see more possibility, to push further into chaos. So we found I needed more chaos in my life. I was operating from too much certainty. It's the reverse for most business owners, is that floor of certainty allows a higher vision for you to then go out and take on the chaos of the business world.
Yeah. for me, as I hear that, and I'm not surprised that that happens. As soon as you de-risk them, the business blows up. And the reason, as soon as I heard you mention that, I was like, it makes so much sense because you're essentially, when they're de-risked, right, and they're taken care of, and they have that, like, get that sigh of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can operate from a completely new vantage point. They're no longer exposed to their own emotional volatility, and they're no longer running their business exposed to their own emotional volatility, right? Now they can look at the business from a higher vantage point with a longer term perspective and make way more measured and calculated decisions that are going to have higher impact on the direction of the business.
Yep. I like to think about it this way. Let's say you rent a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Porsche, right? We've got 600, 700, 800 horsepower off the hood, under the hood, and you're going to go out mountain, canyon, road, and just have a good time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you wake up and it's only maybe 30 degrees outside. It's drizzling just a little bit, right? If the road conditions are like that, how fast are you going to be able to drive?
Not very fast.
Well, you still have all the horsepower though. What do you mean? Like, you still have all the potential. You still have all of that, right? But the external conditions are such that if I had a Toyota Prius, I could keep up with you now because the road conditions limit it, right? So it is certainty. If instead it's 80 degrees, it's sunny, and there's a police escort and the entire road's blocked off, now we can actually unleash.
Like I can really push it.
I can unleash all the horsepower that I have. And that's the idea. If I can de-risk you, we actually unlock the horsepower that you've been holding back on because the uncertainty of the environment. And it happened every single time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's not surprising to me at all because it's not even like you're taking the shackles off.
Yeah.
Right. You're essentially, they have that potential there. It's almost like, have you driven a Tesla where you can pay for an upgrade where they'll unlock the ability for the car to go from like 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds?
I don't think I've driven one that fast, but I've driven fast.
Yeah, so they have like ludicrous mode that you can pay to unlock, right? And until you pay to unlock it, like same car, right? Same capacity, but there's limiters on it. So as soon as you pay, they just push a button, let go of the limiters, and then instant access to this new level. And that's kind of how I see what you're able to do once you kind of de-risk them. They already had all that potential. We just opened it.
We had to pay to unlock it. That's part of it.
Exactly.
It surprises business owners because, again, they're wired to be like, hey, what got me here was more chaos, more risk, more quick action. And they want to take that mentality into investing, which is why actually some of the worst investors are business owners, especially business owners that exit, have all this money and say, I'm going to go take over the investment world. They take that same mentality into the world of investing, but we have to shift it from risk to de-risk, right? From chaos to order. And so that's usually the biggest lesson most learn. And the path to wealth for most is we de-risk you as the individual. You actually then grow your business. Then you have double or triple the profits you were used to. And then we start investing, and then investing becomes super, super easy. And it's
then now you can look at investing in the mindset that you need to, which is long-term. Like you can look at it from a long-term perspective.
Yep.
And not being this thing where you're chasing quick returns. Like, oh, when am I going to get a return? Like in the next 90 days, and you get out of that mindset. It's like, okay, no, like this is like over a 10-year time horizon. And so long as things are trending in the right direction, like we're good.
Yep.
Right.
That's exactly it.
Man, we're coming up on some time here. So I want to be able to jam a little bit more, but I want to give like the audience an opportunity. Like where can it find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my company is called Sovereign Entrepreneur. And that's, again, meant to convey that idea that we want to make you untouchable, right? We want to make you sovereign, to really be in control of the freedom that you launched out to start in your business. So if you just go to Sovereign Entrepreneur, all the information you need will be on that page. I write a newsletter you can subscribe to and learn a little bit more about. There's a workshop recording in there that's really, really powerful that we dive much deeper into each of these concepts. That's free. Just go on and grab that. And then our contact information is in there. We don't play the normal kind of internet marketing games just because of how important what we do is.
We don't have to.
and it wouldn't serve really. So really it's learn a little bit about that and then hop on a call with me and we'll go over your situation. We'll see if you're the right fit. We'll solve a couple of your problems right out of the gate. And then we'll make sure that now's the right time, that we get you the right level of service. Really everything we do is customized through a strategy session that way.
Yeah.
So the resources to be able to acquire or set up a call like that is all there at sovereignentrepreneur.com.
Okay. I'm going to include that in the show notes.
Be great.
And so if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're on our podcast, like it'll be in the show notes or in the description. So one thing I want you to, are there any questions that I didn't ask that you feel like I should have asked before we kind of close out?
I mean, we kind of hit the differences, like what's different. The only thing I'll reiterate is as a business owner, the way you have to work and operate in the world is different. Don't go outside and look at people. Don't take the same advice that's given to a high earning W-2 or a doctor or physician, or like some of the worst advice I see is like, well, Bill Gates is doing X, Y, Z. It's like, yeah, he's worth billions. And when you're worth billions, you can do what he's doing, but you need to do what's right for you. And then I'll just double down and triple down on the best investment you can ever make is in you and your business. And so,
which people don't really care a lot of, like, I don't know anyone in the wealth game who will actually tell that to an entrepreneur. Like, the best place you can invest your time and effort is in your business, right? And then hire out, like, the things that you don't know very well. You hire people who already have those experience, have them do that so you can focus on continuing to do the things that give you the most leverage.
And Iggy, I'll point this out. Like, if you're listening and you can't even fathom hiring somebody to do something better than you, or you're at that stage, we've all hit it in business where it's like, oh, I don't want to hire another person. They're just more problems than they're worth. Then guess what? You shouldn't go buy real estate right now. You shouldn't go make investments. You should hire a coach like Iggy and I did, which is where we met, that will help unlock those problems and figure that out so you can take the value of your business up a notch or two. And again, then engage in the conversation of business. And so our consulting, our strategy incorporates that. Like, is your business where it really needs to be? And if not, let's get it there first. So that's all I'd leave everybody with.
As far as any quotes you can think of that's like that you've read recently that's been very impactful to you that you'd like to share?
Oh man, I should have come ready with quotes.
Or any lessons that you learned from a mentor that you think that really impacted you the most as you reflect, you find yourself kind of coming back to the same.
Yeah, one that I like. So I just left a mastermind meeting, got back yesterday from it. And I think if you've been in masterminds, you always kind of end up with either imposter syndrome or you see that everybody's better than you and doing things that you haven't. Like, that's how you know you're in the right mastermind room, by the way. Mm-hmm. But one of the pieces of advice I constantly remember there is if you're looking to get advice, right? First, don't take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with. That's like piece number one. So if you wouldn't trade places with them, be very careful about the advice you take. And then part number two is the better question to ask is don't ask if I'm not in the same situation as Iggy, I don't want to ask what's Iggy doing now. I want to ask, what did Iggy do when he was in my situation at my point in time that got him to where he is now? It's a much more powerful question when we're asking for advice. So that one was reiterated to me because I was about to make some decisions of what other people are doing. They're much further along than I am. I was like, wait a minute, that's not what they were doing when they were at my stage. I need to figure out what they were doing at my stage. That's a much more powerful question to ask.
Yeah. Sequencing is really important, right? Understanding sequencing. Too often times, I'm glad you mentioned that, because too often times people look at somebody so far ahead and they start doing what they're doing at their stage and not realizing, like, if they were at your stage, they'd be doing things completely different.
Yeah. And it's fun. Like, you and I are we're rebranding our stuff, but guess what? We've been in business for a number of years. We already have revenue. Like, there's some people that will take that whole exercise and do it before they've even made a sale. That's out of order, right? Like, sequencing matters in business. It matters when you go to the dentist. You should probably get Novocaine before the root canal, not the other way around. Like, all across the board. And it matters in investing, right? Yeah. We got to be liquid. We got to de-risk, and then we got to invest. So that idea of order matters a ton.
Yeah. Well, man, Brad, it was so good to have you on here.
I appreciate it, Iggy. This is
everyone listening is going to get a ton of value. And if you do, share this with a friend, comment, click the link that I'm going to leave to the Sovereign. It says sovereign.com. Sovereignentrepreneur.com will be in the show notes. And I think it's worth subscribing to his newsletter. If you're at a point where your business is profitable, right? Schedule a strategy session with him and figure out, what it would look like to have their team work with you in some capacity to start building the wealth, because it's important to start thinking about it, start taking some risk off the table, let them de-risk you so they can essentially push a button and unlock
in your business. Let's go.
The limiters, So hope you find this helpful. If you guys have any questions, everything you need will be in the show notes. Click the link, follow Brad, and I think you're going to get a ton of value from what he has to do. So again, thank you for tuning in. This was the Boardroom Podcast, where we help you stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms. Till next time.